Welcome to the Script Page channel. Today we're diving straight into the hidden architecture of perception. You know, those secret biological and psychological rules that silently govern our senses? Have you ever wondered why some tunes are just insanely catchy? Or why certain sights are universally recognized as absolutely gorgeous? Well, in this explainer, we're going to peel back the curtain on exactly why that is. Just think about it for a second. Why does a specific beat make you instantly start tapping your foot without even realizing it? Or why does a photograph, which, let's be honest, is really just a flat arrangement of light and shadows, literally take your breath away? Why do some things just feel so undeniably right, while others leave you feeling kind of uneasy or bored? It feels like magic, right? But as we'll see, it's actually a highly structured system running entirely behind the scenes in your head. Section 1. The Hidden Rules of Beauty and the Subconscious Mind. Let's get right into it. Okay, so underneath what we usually just call taste or preference, our brains are basically running these incredibly complex calculations. Every single second, your subconscious mind is desperately searching for biological equilibrium. So aesthetics, it isn't magic. It's a predictable, deeply rooted biological response to patterns in space and time. Over the next few minutes, we're going to completely break down this invisible architecture, and we'll start with how our minds actually structure time. Section 2. The Anatomy of a Beat. Structuring time. So how exactly does the human brain process rhythmic sound? Well, there are three absolute requirements for a rhythm to even exist for us. First, recurrence. A sound has to repeat. Second is accentuation, meaning some sounds just gotta hit harder or punchier than others. And third, the rate, or the speed, has to be just right. But here's the real secret. Rhythm isn't just math on a page. It is a physical feeling. If your brain doesn't physically engage with those three elements, the rhythm literally does not exist to you. It's just noise. Section 3. The Speed Limits of Sound. Biology versus Rhythm. Now, our perception of a beat is strictly capped by the physical speed at which our brains can actually process information. Imagine a beat that's way too slow. Say, a sound happens every 1.5 seconds. Our mind totally loses the connection. We just hear isolated noises, kind of like a super annoying dripping faucet. But drop that interval down to half a second and boom, we feel a perfect flowing rhythm. Our brain effortlessly connects the dots. But what if we push it too fast, down to 0.1 seconds? The beats blur into total chaos. Our brain gets so overwhelmed that it forcefully groups the sounds together just to cope with the input. And speaking of sensory overload, the ultimate biological boundary is exactly 12 beats per second. At that precise rate, human perception just hits a brick wall. We literally can no longer hear individual beats. So what does our brain do? It actually invents a slower rhythm and superimposes it over the fast one. Crazy, right? This proves that rhythm is an involuntary biological boundary. Our brain will literally hack its own perception just to find a comfortable pattern. Section 4. The Satisfaction of Symmetry. Structuring space. Now, this intense craving for balance is just as powerful when we shift from hearing to seeing. We've all looked at a perfectly symmetrical building and felt this sudden sense of calm, right? Perfect geometrical symmetry is deeply comforting because it demands equal muscular effort from our eyes. When you look at a symmetrical shape, your physical eye muscles are doing the exact same amount of work on both sides. It feels predictable, it feels safe, and it requires totally minimal mental effort to process. Basically, it's a visual sigh of relief. Section 5. The Illusion of Asymmetry, the Ultimate Plot Twist. But here is the plot twist. If perfect symmetry is so biologically perfect, why are we so obsessed with off-center asymmetrical art? The answer comes down to the difference between simple rest and dynamic tension. Perfect symmetry gives us exactly mirrored elements. It creates an instant, simple rest. It's safe, but honestly, it can get a little boring. Asymmetry, on the other hand, is an unequal division of elements. Technically, it shouldn't work, yet it creates this complex, dynamic equilibrium that just fascinates the brain. It forces our eyes to work a little harder, but in a way that feels super rewarding. Section 6. Balancing Visual Weight. The Mind Seesaw. This brings us to a really crucial concept. Asymmetrical beauty isn't random at all. It's actually just a hidden symmetry based on what we call visual weight. So, visual weight is simply the amount of attention, interest, or motor impulse a specific object demands from your brain. And here's the absolute game changer. Your brain treats visual interest exactly like physical gravity. The harder your brain has to work to process a part of a picture, the heavier that part of the picture actually becomes to your subconscious. To put this into perspective, I want you to imagine your entire field of vision as a giant playground seesaw. The exact center of your view is the fulcrum, the balance point. Every single time you look at a painting, a photograph, or even just looking at your window at a landscape, your brain is instantly trying to balance out the visually heavy elements so that seesaw doesn't tip over. Your eyes are literally sweeping back and forth, desperately trying to find that perfect, satisfying equilibrium. So how do you actually balance asymmetry? Well, it turns out a physically huge but very plain object placed near the center of your view will perfectly balance a tiny but highly detailed object placed way out on the far edge. The massive physical size of the big object is perfectly balanced by the intense mental effort required to look at the tiny little object on the edge. It's an absolutely flawless psychological counterbalance. So, you might be wondering, what exactly makes something visually heavy without making it physically bigger? Well, these are your visual weight multipliers. First up, intrinsic interest, things like a human face. We are biologically hardwired to look at faces, so they pull massive focus and add incredibly heavy weight. Next is depth and perspective. A deep tunnel totally traps the eye and forces it to travel inward, which adds immense weight. And finally, suggested movement. If a character in a painting is pointing or running, our eye is physically forced to follow that invisible line, demanding a huge motor impulse from our brain. All of these elements act like giant lead weights on our visual seesaw. When we pull all of this together, it leads us to one really beautiful, summarizing truth. All beauty is simply the subconscious mind finding perfect balance in a chaotic world. Whether we're grooving to the structured time of a rhythmic beat, designing a cozy living room, or framing up a stunning photograph, aesthetics isn't an accident. It's the brilliant, involuntary biology of our bodies, finding equilibrium and harmony. So I want to leave you with a bit of a challenge today. Take a second and just look around the room you're in right now. Look at the art on your walls or just the arrangement of your furniture. How is your current environment balancing its visual weight? Where is that hidden symmetry on your own visual seesaw? Because once you understand this hidden architecture of perception, I promise you're never going to look at the world the same way again. Thank you so much for hanging out with me for this explainer on the Screen Page channel. Keep exploring and keep learning.